Hey, how's it going, everyone? Sam here. Welcome back to another exciting episode of me looking at stuff, talking about stuff, and sharing it with you. Today we're gonna forego the music. We're gonna take all that heavy metal music and we're just gonna toss it out the window for today. We're in the middle of fall. Halloween's rapidly approaching. It's my favorite time of the year. So why not bring in some holiday cheer with a little holiday fear? And today we're going to talk about some cool movie stuff that I've been getting in the mail recently that I want to share with you guys at home. So, without further ado, shall we? Number one, something I found on eBay, the Amityville Horror Trilogy. Specifically bought this on eBay because I thought it was out of print. It's not. But still, fair price. And also, Amityville Horror Trilogy. If you've seen these movies, you know that they're not very good. But that's okay. The first one is kind of obviously like the staple. That's the big one. This guy right here. This one I've recognized is not a very good movie, but at the same time is one that I've always really, really liked. I remember I used to watch this on the AMC, like 31 Days of Fear that they used to have as a kid. And what's stuck with me the most was that, like, when I was a kid, I was like a huge scaredy cat. These movies kind of like, I was always drawn to like the movies that I weren't allowed to see, which in my household was like the horror stuff. But for something like this, which promised like fear and terror, ultimately didn't really deliver. So as a kid, I could watch this and get a little creeped out, I guess. Like that big, like, hulking, like, demon pig in the window that's like flexing so hard it's gonna like burst. That thing. Like, even as a kid, I was like, oh, like that looks pretty cool, but like not very scary. So like as a kid, I could watch this and like enjoy it, not be terrified. I remember I saw Evil Dead in third grade. Scared me like just out of my mind. I was terrified. But this I could watch. And the box set's cool because it comes with parts 2 and 3 as well. Part 2, the possession one that I remember absolutely nothing from. But part 3 has this great scene where, it could be part 2, but I think it's part 3. But in part 3 has this great scene, kind of like Poltergeist, where a bunch of paranormal researchers come to the house and try to figure out, like, what's going on? Why is this house so haunted? What's the deal? And there's a part where things are coming, things are moving, and like there's like a huge like gust of like evil energy shooting out of this well in the basement, and it goes throughout the basement and up the stairs and hits the basement door and it knocks it off its hinges. But there's this dude kind of like walking, and the door goes flying off and just goes like and like crushes him against the wall. And it's the only thing I remember from this movie. And I feel like these movies, a lot of the kind of sequels, I mean, every movie wants to have a great story. Doesn't always work out that way, but when it comes to horror stuff, I feel like a lot of these movies remain in the public consciousness because they have a very detailed or unique death sequence. It's very inventive, or a novel way you watch a human being die. I mean, let's be real. And this movie had one of those scenes, and that's the only thing I remember from this movie, like, at all. And that was kind of cool. So I'm excited to watch these 3 movies again. I've seen the first one a whole bunch, but like parts 2 and 3, like, could be really cool. And getting 3 Amityville horror movies for the price of 1 is pretty cool. So again, bam, Amityville Horror Trilogy. And as a good pairing with this one, this next one is from Vinegar Syndrome, and that is Amityville, The Cursed Collection. This one has 4 films, includes Amityville Horror, The Evil Escapes, Amityville 1992, It's About Time, Amityville A New Generation, and Amityville Dollhouse. Yeah. I've seen 3 out of the 4. I've never seen Evil Escapes, but the other 3 I have. Dollhouse was one that I bought from Blockbuster on VHS, like back in like like 2003 or so, it wasn't uncommon for them to have like these like VHS sales where they were kind of like trying to clear house of these old tapes to make room for more copies of DVD stuff, you know. Um, so like the bin at my local Blockbuster had like all kinds of like like Mothra movies, some like slasher stuff, and Dollhouse was one of them. And at that point, I'd seen the first Amityville, so I thought they're like, oh, like, I mean, there's a sale, like they're dirt cheap tapes, might as well pick it up. So I did. Um, it was fine, I guess. Again, like the other two that I have seen, and like parts 2 and 3 of the original trilogy, I don't remember anything from any from any of them. Um, but it's cool that like got this little box set now, so now I can relive it all, which is kind of fun. Um, again, 4 discs in this one, all separately. I love the colored binding, not what you would kind of expect from these films, but whoever's decision that was at Vinegar Syndrome, thank you. I really think it's really really cool, to be honest. Um, Vinegar Syndrome rocks. If you're not familiar with them, I guess there's kind of like a tier of like horror genre boutique labels. Like there's like I feel like neck and neck is kind of like Arrow and Scream Factory, and which one's bigger than which one depends. I guess you can nitpick. I think they're more or less kind of level. But below them, I would kind of put like Severin. Below Severin, I'd probably put like Vinegar Syndrome. And I'm not saying in terms of quality, like at all, but I am saying in terms of notoriety of the films that they have. So like something like Arrow or Scream Factory, like for instance Scream Factory, like they have like the Amityville trilogy, like the first 3, the ones that people have seen. They have like the Friday the 13th box set. They have Stephen King movies like Carrie. They have like the kind of more popular B tier slasher stuff like My Bloody Valentine or The Burning, you know. And then a step below that, you got Severin, who kind of deal more in like exploitation and like schlock. But even then, like they have some pretty big names on their label. And like if you're a big genre fan, like there's a lot of recognizable names and titles, coming from them. Vinegar Syndrome, very cool. They, in my opinion, kind of like scrape the bottom and the sides of the barrel. And again, that's not in terms of quality. I feel like the stuff they dig out, they use, it's purely an adoration. Like they love these movies. And these movies, while like honestly, I guess from like a film standpoint, aren't like that very good, I still think that they're like very important. Like we've gotten to the point where like I feel like genre cinema is at a fever pitch, the past decade especially, so past 5 years, absolutely. Stuff like A24, like whether you're like, I don't like the artsy stuff, like that's fine. If you don't, that's not for you, that's totally cool. But you can't deny that like it's opened up a whole new conversation on these kind of films. And the more voices we have talking about it, the more stuff that we can all learn from it, which is pretty cool in my book. But like Vinegar Syndrome, they painstakingly do their own restorations, own all new like extras and stuff like that, release them publicly, pretty affordable prices, and that's awesome. I feel like the picture of genre cinema is becoming clearer and clearer and bigger over this past 5-10 years, particularly because of boutique labels like all these guys, but even stuff like Vinegar Syndrome, even the stuff like Cutting Class with Brad Pitt, which I had seen for the first time this past summer. Never knew it existed. Honestly, overall, didn't think it was that great. But it's like this weird, odd little horror, high school coming of age slasher comedy hybrid thing. And even if the film itself doesn't have much to offer, I feel like its place in the family tree, in the history genre family tree, I think is worth celebrating and worth noting, even if it's just like a footnote. All these footnotes I think are very, very important, and I feel like the people at Vinegar Syndrome are doing an excellent job, and I absolutely love what they do. So, if you're not familiar with them, check them out. They have a ton of cool stuff to look through. Huge catalog, great catalog. And to be honest, like, the more the merrier. Even stuff like their release of Rad, that BMX movie, I've never heard of it, and I'm sure most of the people who were stoked about it had not seen it either. But like, the fact that people were stoked about it, I think is pretty cool. I think these kind of films are important, no matter how lousy they may be. Overall, I still think that like it's just another page to like the overall story, and I'm here for that. Speaking of which, next one is from Severin. Love these guys too. This was up for a pre-order, and if there's one thing that I'll always smash that pre-order button for, it is killer amphibian and killer shark movies. And this one's a no-brainer. This one is none other than Jaws 5, aka Cruel Jaws. New terror surfaces. So you're probably wondering, what the fuck is Jaws 5? Jaws 5 is actually Cruel Jaws. It's like Italian rip-off movie. Not even going to say exploitation, just like absolute trash rip-off from this guy named Bruno Mattei, who goes under the name William Snyder for this one. And I say rip-off not because like it apes the movie Jaws, but they literally lift and then crop scenes from Jaws, like 1, Jaws 2, Jaws 3. The movie Great White, same thing. This movie has stolen footage from these other movies and put it into this one. Universal never came after it though, mainly because like it was never officially released in America when it came out. So like there were like bootlegs, and then ultimately there was like a YouTube link, but like not much to go off of. So Severin tend to like release these little slipcases, you know, which some people hate. I'm into it. If I have the choice, I'll always opt to get the slipcase. But they opted to go for the Jaws 5 cover, which is cool because I think it's safe to say these won't be around forever, and it's kind of a cool piece of memorabilia to have, you know. I've never seen this movie. I blind bought it kind of like I did with their Killer Crocodile or Killer Alligator set that came out last year. But these kind of movies are just like, it's just comfort food. I'm always gonna be hungry for more, you know. I'm not gonna say no to it. Even the back, you know, Bruno Mattei has made trash movie magic. Pretty cool. So that's Jaws 5. Super stoked to watch it. The part of the pre-order was that it came with a novelization of Cruel Jaws, aka Jaws 5. And it's cool because it's like this small white paperback, pretty thin, very reminiscent of like the old Jaws novelizations. I never had those, but I did have a copy of the Jaws log, the book detailing the making of Jaws. I don't have it anymore because it was an old paperback, and honestly it just fell apart on me, and I just had to trash it. It was just beyond saving. But the fact that they did this is super cool. I love this kind of trash, and I am absolutely going to read this, and I'm super stoked to read Cruel Jaws, aka Jaws 5. So thank you, Severin. That's pretty cool. And I know the first two things I showcased were two box sets that complemented each other, since they're both amiable movies. But to complement Jaws 5, the last thing is something I also got from eBay, is this issue of the Roomwork Library, Shark Movie Mania, a bloody history of cinema's greatest killing machines. If you're not familiar with Roomwork magazine, they're a Canadian publication that caters solely to like horror culture. So even though it tends to showcase movies most of all, it dabbles a lot in like literature, comics, video games, music, art, performance art, history, you know, a lot of like paranormal history kind of stuff like that. I think they're fantastic. I've been reading them on and off since like high school. And I don't remember when they started, but they started releasing these little bounded little library books. You know, they're pretty thin. They're numbered. This one's number 9. I have a few of them. Like the first one I think was like 200 films you'd never seen before, which sounds redundant nowadays, but like when it came out, it was still kind of novel and fresh enough that like the idea wasn't beaten to death. So like sure, like there were lists on like IMDb, but there was no like Letterboxd back then. You know, there was no like listicle like Taste of Cinema websites, you know, which are like everywhere nowadays. So it's still pretty novel. And there's other issues, you know, where installments that detail about like the history of like Canadian horror, like horror memorabilia. There's ones about like horror comics, for instance, which is pretty cool. And they're all nice, you know, they're all thin, but they're all like full color. This one also has a little bit about Cruel Jaws in it as well. But if you're like me, like I love reading about horror films and like horror culture in general, and these books are all amazing. They're all very affordable. They're totally worth seeking out. It's worth going online. If you're into this kind of stuff, it's worth going online and seeing which topics they approach, because if one of them like kind of like interests you in the slightest, then they're absolutely worth seeking out and picking up. I can't vouch for these enough. Like super cool. So I'm pretty stoked to read this one. A lot of like the later kind of shark stuff, you know, like Sharknado, I've never seen, or like Sand Sharks or whatever. And like maybe one day I will, but like there's also a lot of spotlights on like kind of older stuff I've seen while flipping through this. So I'm very stoked to check this out. And that pretty much wraps that up. Again, you know, big fan of all this stuff. You know, I love genre cinema, particularly horror movies. I love like seeking stuff out. If you're like me, you're just always hungry for more. So like at a certain point, you kind of see all the heavy hitters. So you got to just start like digging deeper and deeper and deeper, which lead to discoveries from stuff like Severin and Vinegar Syndrome, or like my personal favorite, Intervision. You know. But like I think that they all, as trashy as they may be, they all have something interesting to add to like the overall like story, and that's like kind of ultimately what I'm here about. Like I just love the history of it all. You know, I just kind of want to explore and examine all of it, which is exhausting and maybe impossible, but like I'm gonna keep trying. You know, never gonna give up. So that pretty much wraps this episode up again. We'll be back next Monday with another episode focusing again on like some cool like horror movies and stuff like that. Talk about some more Blu-rays and boutique labels. Keep them short, keep them fun. If you're new, feel free to like and subscribe, share with your friends. Again, like I just said, the show comes out every Monday. So come back, you know, late Monday night. And the episode will be up. Have a lot of fun. Again, thank you guys. I have so much fun just kind of doing this and just sharing this cool stuff, you know. So thanks for watching, like seriously. So finally, I'm Sam. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching the show. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care, everyone.